My idea will be bring you three slides about REPL in general, and then jump back to code to show you certain things, how things might work. I'm really jealous about some people having a beer at the moment. I couldn't get it. But maybe if the talk goes good, I'll deserve one. So, what is JShell? JShell in general is a tool that allows a certain amount of dynamic interaction with Java. As if you've been familiar with REPL, that's just REPL. If you haven't been, it's a read, evaluated, print loop for the Java platform. That's how Oracle advertise it. So we are able to type in some Java code, some Java tokens, press enter, it will be evaluated by the compiler, and the result will be printed, and we can get back. This is quite deeply integrated into the JDK. So first of all, we can invoke JShell programmatically from our code. I won't be showing that, but it's in there. And it also made Java platform redefine a little bit how the compilation can be invoked from Java. So it goes very deeply into the code. And that way, it is a slightly better thing than many different Java shells, Java REPLs we have, because it always comes with the JDK. This also comes with an API that allows us to use it from other applications. So in theory, we should be able to, for example, bridge communication between JShell and our application server if that's, for example, something we would like to build. So yeah, that's quite powerful. So why JShell in general? Why are we bothering ourselves with a REPL? The way Oracle advertise it is about learning Java. If we tried to showcase Java to anybody not familiar with the language, we always have the problem how to start. My personal experience is I'm working with one of the code academies back where I'm from in Gdańsk. And this is quite problematic when you have somebody totally new to the language, somebody totally new to Java, and you would like to show them the basics, but you have to first do a class called Sandbox and public static void main. And yeah, that's kind of a learning curve that you would like to avoid. So Oracle would like more people to join Java community, and that's one of the ways to make this learning curve less steeper. The other thing, and that's my personal use case for JShell, is a way to experiment with the new libraries. Whenever you see a new library or you see some new things in Java, you would like to try it out, you usually either have to do this Sandbox class, public static void main, and then do some code, run it, and kind of do it on your own. Or a slightly better way, just build a test and wrap the new APIs within a test and try it out. So, so JShell can give you a way to experiment with the new libraries. It can also be a tool for some rapid prototyping. So you've come out with this great idea of a library and you would like to try it out. So you don't have to set up your IDE, you don't have to set up your project, you just run REPL and you type in some stuff and it starts working. So you can save it and then take it from there in your traditional IDE. And I will be actually showcasing this as well. And it can be integrated with your build system. So if you have a fairly complicated build system, you can add, for example, JShell to your Maven build file as a plugin and run JShell on the top of the complete class path you are having in your Maven. So this is quite powerful. So yes, I've spoken what is JShell. What we'll be looking at is I will show you how to run it, some features. I will play a little bit with the REPL based on some new Java9 things, some enhancement in Java9. And then I will build a small web application based on Spark Java with some WebSocket and show you some Maven integration. That's my plan for the presentation. So no more slides. And I will do it like this. So we have the terminal, and yeah, that's so far what we need. First of all, we need Java9. We are having Java 8 here, so I will switch it to Java9. Java version, no. Yeah, we are having Java9. So now I can run JShell. I just type in JShell, and it pop-ups with, I'm here. So this is a fully fledged Java environment. If you ask, the JEnv command is a Java environment. If you're not familiar with that, it's something like Ruby VM, where I can switch different virtual machines within within the same environment. So you can install Java9 somewhere and just switch in the terminal, and then it's working. So JShell comes with a help. There's a list of commands. If I start a slash, it's a command, and then I can type in some standard Java code, like 4 + 4. It gives me 8. As you can see, it assigns the result to a variable, and there is always a variable. So I have 1, which is a variable, which is a sum, which is an 8. That's pretty much how REPL works. So the variables with the $sign doesn't make much sense. So I can name the variables. I can either play with it, so another 4 + 5. And if I go for that's some shortcuts within the JShell. In my environment, it's alt +1 + v. So I can name it. It's a sum. And then I can list everything I've done so far with a list. So we have some stuff that already has been going on. I can also list the variables. So I have the things that I have already named. Yeah, that's the simplest thing. Obviously, JShell, as Java is built on packages and on some namespaces, JShell is coming with some default imports. So if I go for imports, I have things that are already imported into my project. So I can do math, min, and as you can see, if I tap it, it suggests some auto-completion. So I can say whether 1 or sum, and it returns 8 as the minimum of those two, or max as the maximum. Simple as that. As you can see, I can go like a standard shell up and down and through the history. Similar to Bash, I can go Control +R, so a search, and if I go for min, you can see my past comments, which is quite helpful. When it comes to auto-completion, if I go for tab, it suggests what I can put in there. And if I go for shift tab, I have a more verbose explanation. What exactly can I put into that, into the method? Shift tab again, and full Java doc comes out, which is quite handful. So I create it, and again, yeah, it's working. So that's the most basic stuff. Okay. If you have any questions, just shout it out, or we can tackle that at the end. So with JShell, these are the basic. Now let's do some more proper stuff. Let's define the function or the interface. We can do it easily. So I can define interface, which will be, say, toString, like this. And you can see it's opening kind of a bracket, and it starts working. So I have a toString interface, which will have a method called convert, for example, and it will convert integer. To string. So now I have interface created, and I can do, for example, new toString method. For example, I can do CLojure because this is a functional interface. I can build something like I can start building that. In a similar fashion, I can define functions, so I can type in, I will have a function toString, which will take an object, let's say, and it will return an object toString, which is not very secure because it will fail on the null pointer with the null pointer exception if I pass a null, but I can build a function like this. And if I, for example, have I will build a string called foo, which is bar. Okay, I can use toString foo. Okay, actually, no. toString. Can I zoom in a bit? Yeah, I can try. That might be. I'm limited to the. Slightly better? Okay. This makes my terminal very, very tiny, but I will leave it at that. Okay. Now I'll. This is very basic. Now let's say I would like to edit my function. I don't like it very much. I would like to edit it. So JShell is coming with an edit command, so I can type edit and say toString, which will edit my interface. You don't see it at the moment, but by default it comes with this kind of a tooling, very simple editor that you can use to edit your function. And if we go somewhere here, we'll change it to, let's say, convert it to. Then we'll accept it, and you see this has been replaced. You know, the function, the interface has been replaced. We can obviously set up an editor for something more, something better, like not the default one. So we have a VI, and if we do edit with toString, it pops a VI at the moment, and I can do something with it. So I can go back to, and I save it, and I quit, and I have the function replaced. So this is what JShell offers so far, and obviously I can list everything I've done so far. I can also save it. Let's say save it to temp foo, and it saves the whole output to a flat file. So if you've done something meaningful, you can go there and pick up your snippets on your own. So the basics. Now, as we are having it working, let's see what Java 8 can offer us. As you've seen or as you've heard on the previous talk about Java 9, there are some language enhancement within Java which we can look into, which we can explore. For example, Java 9 comes with the builder. The Java 9 comes with a certain set of classes that can help us to evaluate, to build. I don't have an appropriate input, probably. Okay. So let's have a look into stream interfaces, for example. Let's build ourselves an array. an arise as list, and let's build it 1, 2, 3, 4, and null. And so we now have an array other variable 12. Let's name it. It's a list. And then we have a map operator in streams, so we can have 12 as stream, and we can map it to optional of nullable. Okay, and if we have a look what we have now, okay, we have a few optionals mapped, not yet materialized. And now if we do for each on that, system out println, we have optional, 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 and optional of empty. One of the problems in Java 8, for example, when working with optionals, was that it wasn't that easy to get from, to unpack optional into a stream. So for example, if we have such situation like this, and we would like to pick up only non-empty optionals, we will have to go for something like this. So we have my list and we stream it, or we have, let's do the arrays again. So we have arrays as list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, null. Let's call it somehow list, and my lists of stream, I will map it to optional of nullable. And then if I would like to get a stream without empty optionals, I had to do something like this. So I had to flat map optional, map it, which will be mapped to stream of, like this. Or else, if it was something different, I had to create empty stream. Okay, and then I think for each system print line. There's probably a typo somewhere. Yeah, I have optional of map. Okay, so now I unpack it. So that was very cumbersome syntax. And for example, in Java9, we can replace these all with just flat mapping and calling the optional stream, and that's one of the enhancements in the Java9. So optionals comes with a stream method, because after all, optional is a stream of just either empty or one element. So for example, one of these handy stuff. The other thing is, for example, a long-awaited method that if I have my list and I take a stream, I can think of printing everything on the list. If I print it, like you've seen for each system, out println, I have a null. So I can think about printing everything until a value is null. So there is a function take while. So I can take as many elements from my stream as long there is objects non-null, and then I can do for each system out and print line. Okay, so I have null thrown away. So that way we can use JShell to explore how Java9 will gonna look like and how things might get different on how the API works. I had a conversation last night with one of my colleagues, and he also pointed out that when you start using REPL like this, you pretty much start to think a little bit differently about your code. You start to look into it and more reason how it works, and that way kind of the code is less accidental. You kind of think what you are pretty much typing in. that's not the only thing. In Java9, what we can look also into is totally new APIs that are coming in Java9. For example, there is one thing that you've probably heard about is HTTP client coming to the standard library. This is coming as a module, so I'll be importing a module. I can do it in JShell. As you can see, it's imported a module and restore the existing state of the shell, running everything I've already typed in and I've already created. So my list of comments is still complete with all the errors and examples. So I import the HTTP client, and I will import. No, I don't have the latest build of the JDK9. That's why, for example, my HTTP client, which is supposed to be in the Java.net HTTP package, is still in the JDK incubator. So I'm importing JDK incubator HTTP like this. Okay, so I have HTTP client, and I will import static some utility stuff that will be helpful later on. So request and response. So imagine I would like to build a client for a very simple service. I'll show it to you. So imagine I have a service which is an HTTP service, which is supposed to return a profanity. It's working somewhere on Heroku, so it might take a while until it starts. But it should return a JSON that will show that this sentence is okay and doesn't contain any profanity words. If I change it to, let's say, shit. You see that it contains profanity. Very simple stuff. So now I'll do a client for that. So back to shell. So I will start building a client. So first of all, I'll have to define a URL. That'll be my URL, which I'll be calling out. And then I have to build my HTTP request. This is not the latest API. It is still changes. It is still changing. There are some small enhancements in the latest build compared to what I'll be showing you, but still the concept is similar. So I build a HTTP request, a new builder based on my URL to URI. URL to URI. I will be doing get method, and let's build it. Okay. So this is my request. Okay, so now I have a get-based HTTP request. So now I'll have to wrap it in a client. In the latest build, you can run it more or less directly, so get the response from the requests. In the earlier one, it's a little bit more cumbersome. So I do a HTTP client, new HTTP client, and I will be sending my request. And there will be a body handler which will transform the incoming result as a string. Okay, more or less like this. And now it's doing the actual call. The call will probably fail because I haven't set up the headers still. So if I look into, I can look into the response, and for example, I can see what was the status code, and status code was 200, so I can see the body, and the body was the HTML, the XML that it contains some profanity. So I would like to have it as a JSON file. That's not a problem. So I have this new builder. I can back to my request. And I will add one more thing. So I'll have a header. And the header is accept application JSON. Okay, so I have the request, so I can run the client again. Okay, and if I look into the results, I can see the JSON result. So this is pretty much how it works and how it allows me to work with the new API to see how it's going to work. If you have some experience with JAX-RS HTTP client, it looks a little bit familiar. There is no plan at the moment to unify those two parts of the specification. It will be still independent from what I've read, but yeah, it's a nice direction. The other good thing about the HTTP client, as you've seen in Java 9, there is this reactive streams interfaces, and everything within the HTTP client is based on streams. So the body processors that I was doing as string are actually implementing the flow producers and the flow subscribers, so you can make it reactive to certain extent, which is quite a nice thing for the future reference. Okay, so these are the basics. So now let's build something more sensible. I will leave the shell for a while. And imagine I am building, I would like to build a web application. So imagine I have a very simple, I wonder how it's going to work. Imagine I have a very simple UI, which looks like this. Yeah. So I have a to-do UI, a to-do application. I will do it like this. A new window, and I will make it smaller, like this. Okay. So I have the to-do UI, and now this is a JavaScript snippets. I can type in something, but it never remembers it. There is no backend underneath. There is no server side. And what I'll do is I will use JShell to build this server side from the REPL. So back to my shell. Okay. So as you can see, I'll clear it. Now I will run JShell with the JShell with some. I can run JShell with some classes on the Classpath. So I can do either JShell help, and you can see I can define some Classpath, so I can put some libraries on the Classpath, or I can run JShell without anything and tell it to load some additional Classpath. So it will go like this. Environment, yeah. So I have some classes defined that are using the Spark Java micro framework. It's based on Jetty, so as you can see, there is a complete Jetty and JSON and some other stuff. So it loads up my libraries, and now I can start working with the new library, with the new API. So I do. First of all, I need to import something, so I'll import Spark.everything. So now in my imports I have Spark, so I can do service ignite, because this is how service ignite, and that's my HTTP. That's how Spark defines it. And what I would like is I would like to run it on the port 8888, and I would like to define some static files. I'll just copy and paste it, and that's the location of my UI. Okay, so it's reported that, yeah, I have some static files imported. So now within the, whoops, where is it? Okay, that's my, one of the things. Yeah, that's my REPL. So now if I go to localhost 88888, it's still not there. So I have to run one thing. I will initialize this Spark. So now it's started in the background, and now I can go and reload it. And yes, it is. It's working already with the server. So now I'd like to build a very simple endpoint. So now I'd like to serve some more data coming from the application. I can do it like HTTP GET. That's the UI. That's the API. So I can go bar, and it requires request object and response object, and can return a bar and can return a bar. If I do it like this, then I have obviously that was bar. Yeah. Okay. So now I get my first endpoint. Not very sexy. So now let's do let's build something more meaningful. Let's define a public class called todo. It's an empty class, and let's set an editor to vi, and let's add something more meaningful to this class. So let's edit the todo class. It is an empty class, as you can see. The coloring is not the best, but we'll have to leave with that. Come on. Replace it. Okay. I won't be typing it. I will just copy and paste it. So I have. The yellow is not the best color, but I'm not changing it. So I have a very simple to-do, and I will add also a toString method. Okay, so I have a class built. So if I now save it and return to my shell, I can create a new class. So I can do new to-do, and as you can see, REPL will suggest me how I can create a new to-do. It will have ID 99, REPL to-do, first and false. So now I have an object that I already created. So if I have this to-do, it's under 9, I can name it. It's a to-do. So let's expose it as one of the endpoints. So I will get HTTP, okay, and it will be foo. It will come with request and response, and will return a to-do. Okay, and if I go back to my this one, if I go for foo. I have my to-do, which I have just defined running through the complete server. Okay, that's how I can play with the new syntax and with the new API. So let's build something more sensible, because I still don't have the API. Don't have the API here. So let's get back. Let's create, for example, a simple storage. So let's define a queue where I'll be putting my UI. So I have a storage, and I could put my to-do into a storage. So now my storage contains a single to-do, and I can create an endpoint that will serve the data that I have in my storage. For that, I will I will import, I will use Google JSON to convert it to JSON. And I will do it like this. I have JSON, new JSON, okay. And I can do HTTP GET, API to-dos, again, request and response. And I can return new array list of my storage based on JSON to JSON. Okay, so now I have another endpoint, which is API to-dos, and let's have a look how it works. So if I go API to-dos, I have a JSON here. So if I, as you can see, if I refresh it, it already calls my my method. So if it calls my method, I can add another thing to my storage. So I can do storage add a new to-do with ID 1 and new to-do and 10, and that will be actually completed, so it is true. Okay, so I would add it to my storage. I have 2 elements, and now if I refresh it, I should have 2 to-dos. So that's how I can use REPL to play with it a little bit more. I can go and do all the other methods, so creations and removing and so forth, just by playing with Spark Java API. So for example, do HTTP post or HTTP delete, but that's not that does not make much difference from what we've already seen. So as you can see, I can play within the REPL to build up something meaningful. If I think that okay, that makes sense, and maybe I should jump to the IDE and build something more meaningful to that, I can save it as temp. Let's say Spark. And it's saved to the external file. So if I go to temp Spark, you can see everything that I've typed in so far. So the complete history of my interaction with the JShell. If I can pick up the samples and get straight to the IDE, or I can jump back to JShell. Okay, as you can see, there is nothing in there. I will start with the classes. Okay, and I can open the existing file, so it's /temp spark to show you. Now I don't have anything; it's not working. I will open the existing file, and JShell will import everything I've done so far. Redefine all the endpoints I've already had, and if I go to the browser, it is still working as it used to be earlier on. So now you can see that it's not only type in and forget; you can save it and you can get back to it. To this, but the use case I'm showing is, I think, a little bit niche. So it's not how every developer would like to approach it and look into that. Usually we would like it to have integrated into our Maven application, or even to our Maven build file, or have it integrated in the IDE, like this REPL in Scala or in Groovy, for example. As the JDK9 is a fairly new thing, the integration are not there yet. There is a NetBeans integration with JShell, so if you download the latest NetBeans, it is coming with the JShell if you run it with the JDK9. The good thing about NetBeans integration is that it can be used also easily and run on the top of Java9. So you run your NetBeans with Java9, but your project can be Java8, and JShell works perfectly fine there. There is a support in IntelliJ, I think, in the latest release, but I'm not sure there. What I would like to show you now is a similar thing with the Maven integration. So if I define Java home to Java9 and run my Maven project with a target JShell compile, I have a project which does similar thing. It's called Spark. I can run it, and Maven will trigger and will build my application, and it will run JShell. It will import, it will take all the libraries I have as my dependencies, put it on the Classpath, and trigger JShell with it. So I have a very similar concept. It is a very similar application, also handling its to-dos. So now, as you can see, it doesn't work. I have a slightly different API there. So I can do a similar storage. No, I don't have an import example Spark. That's my classes. And now I can do my store, and I can build my application with slightly different API. So I create an app on the port 4567 with some storage built in, which is kind of my production code at the moment. Let's say it. Let's pretend it, and I can do app run for like this, and the application is running on the different port. So let's get it here. Oh, come on. Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have different application running. So I can take code that already exists and do something with it, play with it a little bit more. So I can do storage, store add, different API to do create. And the to do completed. Okay, and now you can see, yeah, that's another to-do. So if I can take my existing application and play with it, I can, for example, add some more features or try out some more features. So as I'm getting closer to the end, I can show you one more thing. I can take it not only for my own applications, but I can play with some new frameworks that are coming in. So I have another example, which is a Spring project. So if I show you the, I have a Spring which is only a POM file which defines a plugin, and it defines a new Spring context. Well, new Spring in version 5. So I'd like to see how it's changed and how I can play with it. So what I can do is I can run JShell with my Spring 5, and it will load my my Spring application in a similar fashion. So let's see what's coming in the. If you've been to Josh's talk on Spring Reactive, you've probably seen some things. But for example, Spring is coming with this not so new idea of manually registering beans without scanning the class path. That's coming in the Spring 5. So let's see how it might work. So let's imagine I define a public class foo. And I have a public class called wrapper. I will edit them. So I set editor to VI, and I will do some quick copy and pasting. So edit foo. Okay. So I'll just have a constructor. I'll save it, and I will do it a wrapper, which will be dependent on foo. I just like to show you the dependency between the bins. So now I have the two objects that are dependent one on the other. If I would like to do a new foo, it requires a string, and if I would like to do new wrapper, it requires foo. So I have two beans that are dependent, very simple poachers. So what I like to do is I import myself some Spring classes and build a new Spring annotation context. So now I have a Spring context. And what's coming in the new Spring, I can register manually a bean within the context. So I can do register bean called foo class, and I can pass a supplier that will create a new Spring 5 bean like this. Okay, so now I have a bean in there, and then I can register another bean, which is a wrapper. Just a bean called wrapper class, and it will be and besides a supplier, I can, for example, pass in bin definition. So I can do bin definition and say this bin definition is set scope to prototype. So if you're familiar with Spring, you know that it means that on every request to the wrapper, to the wrapper bean, a new bean will be created. So I can refresh the context, so set it up. Okay, so I have my context ready and my hierarchies, and I can do get bean wrapper class. And yeah, and if I edit wrapper, so you can see in the constructor it does system out print line of my foo text. So it's printed out Spring 5 whenever I do get bean. So I can try to register another bean. I can do register bean foo class, and that way I can experiment with my Spring a little bit more. So I can do, let's do it like this. Foo Spring 5 is some, and we'll see how this works. So now I have another bean, and let's go to the context and get wrapper, get bean called wrapper class, and we see Spring 5 is awesome. So I can dynamically, for example, register a new bean in Spring, and I don't need to set up an IDE to see how it's exactly working. I can just run it in my JShell. So as I'm pretty much running out of time, or we are just done, that's what I wanted to show you. If this is of some interest to you, you can catch me up until the end of the conferences here, or you can go to my GitHub account where all the slides and the examples and all the snippets I've shown are already shown. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, just shout, or if you want to enjoy the break, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.